when you're working with acrylic paint, especially if you're doing something from nature or real life, you want to put out a variety of different paints that will help you work with those colors. Now, from the paints that I have, there are a few that I always recommend getting. These are all of my, this is like Turner's yellow, bronze yellow. This is a yellow ochre. And this is unbleached titanium. This is red oxide, that's burnt umber, that's burnt sienna, that's just a straight deep red. This is phthalo green. It's not one of my favorites. It has more blue in it than it does greenish colors in it, so it doesn't look super realistic to me. This is an indigo. This is my phthalo blue. I really like to mix this one to get green. This is sap green. Very good for when you want to try to get natural colors. And then this is my brilliant yellow. So you'll notice that I have a lot of colors in the neutral range and only one color in a real bright range, and I don't have any white in here because I really won't need it. All of the colors in the aloe plant that I intend to paint have some bit of green in them and or yellow in them. The very first thing that you want to do is to prepare your canvas. Is you want to put a basic covering of tone across your whole entire paper, because working right from the white tends to throw off your colors that you're using. So you can choose how you want to put your tone in the background. You could use any number one of the colors that you mixed yesterday as a starting point, or you could do something like this where you do a variety of colors going across it, or you can choose to just use one solid color as you plan to paint your work. So you can see here that I've drawn just a very simple version of an aloe plant that I pulled off of the shelf over by the windowsill. And it does not look exactly like the aloe plant that I pulled off. I took some artistic liberty and I added in some of the petals so that I could create a nice balanced composition. Now I'm just going to start right off with working on the petals and referencing the colors that are in my aloe plant. So my aloe plant will be sitting up here. It will be out of the line of sight for you guys, but it is definitely where I can see it. Since there is no direct light source on here, it's kind of an overhead light and there's light coming in from the side, what I'm going to be doing is attempting to create shadows where pieces overlap or cast a shadow, and also highlights where the lights are reflecting down off of it. Right now, this aloe has tiny little spots all over it. I'm going to reserve that for later, but I am going to attempt to get a nice color. Now, will I be able to match the color exactly? Probably not, but I can do fairly closely if I lay my paint down and I grab a little and I mix. So I'm just kind of mixing what I think might look good, keeping in mind that when I mix, I don't completely mix it all up. I'm using the sap green, I used a little bit of the brilliant yellow, and now I am using, and I also used some of the Turner's yellow. I like my paint to fill in the spaces on my canvas. So when I'm painting like this, and you can see the texture of the canvas underneath it, I would want to get a smaller paintbrush so I could actually get in there and get into all those little grooves. And I would probably use a little bit more paint, and I might water it down just a little bit to get it into these spaces to start. Keep in mind that most of the painting that you do will not look correct until you are almost completely finished with the painting. This is something that I refer to as the awkward stage, and it lasts a long time. I found a brush that was a bit better for me. This is called a filbert. It has a rounded tip to it, but it's also very long. And I'm currently just dipping right into my sap green so that I can get that laid in there and get a nice line and a nice edge, just to show you how you paint your edges. Then I'm going to come back and grab a little bit of the yellow ochre, and I'm really trying colors just to see what I like right now. That's one way to go about it, is to just keep playing with the different colors till you find something that you like. Another way people will do it is they'll just pre-paint everything and match it all. So you'll continue to go ahead and work on your piece like this, and continue to add in colors, keeping in mind that the longer you let your paint sit out into the air, the harder it will get. It'll get like a hard skin coat on top of it. You'll just have to punch through that to get in there. I tend to like to use a little bit more paint when I'm painting so that I have some surface texture, but that's because I really like texture. So right now what I'm doing is I am attempting to make some of the leaves of this plant that are in the back darker, and I'm just using the straight color. If I wanted to get even darker with it, which I do, I would probably use a little bit of my burnt umber and mix that in there. Now keep in mind that anytime you paint, if you paint something and you're like, ooh, that's too dark, you can come back once it's dry and paint right over it. It is acrylic paint. You can paint over acrylic paint very quickly. You always want to try to get your background color in first before you actually start your painting of your objects, so that you don't have to go back and paint around the background. Now I'm just going to go ahead and leave this yellow as my background for right now and not worry about painting in that extra part. If you need a tinier paintbrush, you just have to come up and see me and I will get you what you need. Now I want to go ahead and paint this piece in here, and I want to make it lighter. So I'm actually going to start with more yellow, but leave that little bit of green that was in my paintbrush in there as I pull down and I paint that. And as I get near the bottom, I want to take my paint, and again, I'm just practicing and playing with some colors, and I'm going to put some in here. And why did I choose to use this reddish brown? Well, because red is the complement of green, and I thought it might be kind of neat to have that underneath when I go and I paint over the color. And then even though you don't really see it a whole lot, it is there and it does reflect on through. So you're going to continue to work on your painting this way, building it up in successive layers. You'll have today and tomorrow to work on this, and by the time you get done with this, hopefully you'll know how to blend paint. It really is all about practicing and trial and error. So if you're trying to think you should be perfect right off the bat, forget about it, because it's not going to happen. You really have to spend a lot of time painting before you get good at painting. It just is what it is. Now, I'm just going to, for the funsies, try a little bit of whatever this is. Oh, it's blue. This is my indigo. And see what I end up with. I don't know that I necessarily like the fact that I have the yellow background. I might change that up before I go any further with my petals or my leaves. I might change that up and add in different color so that it becomes a little bit less shocking. I don't know that I really like the way my colors are looking up against it. Now, some people will probably look at this and go, oh my God, you just put down brown. Why did you do that? Well, because I'm going to let it dry, and then I'm going to put another color over it. If you keep trying to work on an area that is semi-finished or not quite dry, like let's say try to work right here, all I'm going to do is start pulling paint off. So you really do have to let it get dry before you start that. Otherwise, you're just going to be causing yourself to have more work. Reference an object, but don't be a slave to that object. Just reference it, look at it, use it as an example. If you don't understand how value and light works, my suggestion is to get one of my spotlights and put it on the plant so that you get a really strong shadow and values, and then that'll make it a little bit easier when you're painting your project in, because you'll have real strong lights and darks. Value, if you haven't learned already, is a very important part of what you do here, and many of you are being extremely shy and scared of putting in too much value. And you need to stop being scared, because it will only make your artwork look better if you use value. Neat part about with acrylic paint is if your values are too dark, you can come back and add in more on top. And if your values are too light, you can come back in and add more on top.